Nothing is more satisfying than defeating an enemy like that and getting this really cool cinematic and getting all of the cool materials you need to go back to your base and to level up your character and to continue the hunt. And that is the entire point of this game. Fighting larger than life monsters, defeating them, harvesting their bodies, and moving on to the next monster. I'm talking about Wild Hearts, which came out last year, but thanks to the magic of super duper PlayStation Plus, I can now play it and enjoy it and give you guys my thoughts on it. I'm about 10 hours into the game or so. I am well into the second biome. This game can best be described as a cross of Fortnite and Monster Hunter. And both of those have really cool characteristics. Both have some frustrating things. Up front, I will say I do recommend this game, but there are some significant caveats. I think it's worth your time. If you haven't played a Monster Hunter game, I think you'll find that it adds a lot more depth than a game like Dauntless, which is very, very basic Monster Hunter. Obviously, Monster Hunter being on the other end of that spectrum. Very, very difficult. I think this is somewhere in the middle. So I think it does have a decent enough learning curve to get you invested in how to play. And because of the ease of some of the abilities and some of the other mechanics we'll talk about, it is easy to jump into, but as with most things, difficult to master. So Wild Hearts has a difficult challenge because Monster Hunter owns the monster hunting empire, right? They've made like 30 games at this point. Every game always better than the last, continuing to refine and expand upon lessons that they have learned, biomes that you can explore, universes, weapons, characters, plot lines, party systems, monster combat. All this and more keeps getting rolled into the Monster Hunter formula. And we got another big one coming out next year. I cannot wait for it. I will probably invest hundreds of hours into it, just like I did on Monster Hunter Rise and all of the associated DLC with Monster Hunter Rise. But needless to say, Wild Hearts is going up against a juggernaut. So it's really hard to say, is this better than Monster Hunter? Or is this, more along the lines, like, how does it compare? Because it doesn't. It can't. It's impossible. That doesn't mean there isn't space for new innovations, and this game actually pulls off some really good ones. So, much like Monster Hunter, you are this nameless hero who is sent into this world of Azuma, and you are going to basically start hunting down monsters very, very quickly. The catch is, unlike Monster Hunter, where the world is mostly kind of offline to you, in terms of you can't really interact with it other than climbing and just like foraging. In this game, you're going to be able to build your base. You're going to be able to build structures that persist in the battlefield. So if you build a structure on the first day you're playing and you come back on the 150th day you're playing, your structure is still going to be there, assuming a monster didn't knock it down, of course. The structures serve as a great way to allow you to traverse the level quicker. They also allow you to make these temporary strongholds where you can upgrade your gear and where you can rest and cook food and forge, take all the forged materials and craft new things. That's really, really cool. Additionally, they're good for combat. So it's this whole Karakuri thing, that's the mechanic, which basically is this Fortnite element where on the fly, and you've seen me do it already in a little bit of the video here, on the fly, you can basically just construct things, springs, buildings, launchers, and then different mechanics of like a spring, a box, and a spring will make this thing called like a thumper, which is like a giant hammer which will come down and crash on an enemy's head. Or you'll be able to build a giant wall quickly that interacts and blocks an enemy's advance. You can just do basic things like building a tower and flying away if the enemy is to too much for you, or you can do a really powerful above attack where you can, you know, jump down and like do massive damage. I like this mechanic a ton. It really mixes up the gameplay. You don't necessarily need to do it, but you'd be foolish for not. You can just basically sword and board every enemy out. Pick your favorite weapon. I think there's like 10 weapons in this game. Giant sword, katana, bow and arrow. There are others you'll unlock as time goes on. I don't want to give them away, but there's tons of weapons for you to select. You'll find something you like. And you can just roll around and attack weak spots and try to cut off the enemy's tail or damage them, or, you know, jump on their back and stab them in the back of the neck and do like mount damage. You can do all that stuff just like you could in Monster Hunter. But with the Karakuri, you're able to really enhance how you play gameplay, and how you enhance your gameplay because of things like jumping off and doing a down attack gives you significantly more damage, or has a chance to stun, or will block an enemy that's, say, like an enemy's getting ready to spit some kind of like fire or poison attack on you. You can quickly build a structure and deflect it. It's really smart how it works. And I'm really glad that this game has that mechanic, and I'll be surprised to see if future iterations of Monster Hunter don't try to plagiarize that somehow, because it is by far the most fun part of this game. The world is fun enough to explore on its own. There's a couple different biomes that you'll go through. Open world area for you to explore, to find little treasures, rare crafting materials, finding monsters, and just generally working your way through the map. There'll be areas of the map you can't get to yet because you haven't yet learned the appropriate Karakuri. That is a lot of how the story is progressed. So early on, you got to cross to get to this bridge to get to a village, but you can't because the bridge is broken. Later on, you're going to get this vine launcher, which is basically like a giant slingshot with a like a giant bow and arrow on it. And you're going to launch that across the map, and then you're going to shimmy across this zip line, essentially, which could be used in combat. You could create this figure eight of all these like spider nests around enemies if you want to just take to the skies. And certain enemies that fly in the air, you're going to want to use that ability to kind of knock them down. So not only does these Karakuri actually impact traversal, but they also directly impact combat. And I think that's a very, very cool mechanic. And I like that. They've learned a lot of things, I think, from Monster Hunter as well, namely how easy it is to get into a match and play with other people. Monster Hunter suffers greatly from this very hard thing of trying to get into a lobby and making sure everybody's ready to go. And it's hard sometimes to find a match because nobody's fighting the monster you want to fight. Here, super, super easy. One button multiplayer. You can request help or jump into another person's game and just start playing with them. And it just works. And I don't know why Monster Hunter struggles so bad at multiplayer, but this game clearly has figured out how to fix that problem. And it's great for it. And it has made it an absolute gem. Just playing with randos. I've told all my friends about this game. Nobody really seems to be deep into the Monster Hunter world like I am, so there's not a lot of interest, unfortunately, from my close circle of friends to play with. But if I'm struggling on a particular enemy, or if I just want to jump in and grind for materials, well, I can. It's very, very easy to do so. Speaking of grinding for materials, this game has a lot of crafting and, unfortunately, a lot of grinding, just like Monster Hunter. Sometimes you'll have to kill an enemy 5 or 6 times to get the associated materials in order to craft a certain piece of gear, or that either because you like the ability on it, or you like the aesthetic, or part of the set, or whatever. Same thing goes for the very expansive weapon tree, which you will be able to quickly start modifying your sword if you want it to be more of an elemental weapon, doing more lightning damage, or fire damage, or poison damage, or if you want it to do more bleed, or more critical attack. There's a massive tree that will help you kind of start to figure out where you want to end up. And just like with a lot of the Monster Hunter gameplay, you're going to be doing it a lot. It does get a bit grindy at times. But I find a game like this, when you start to get better, you can carve out some of the critical monsters pretty quickly. Once you start to get a little bit faster and you start to get a little more powerful. you're going to be able to burn enemies down quicker, and you're going to have a good time doing it, especially with all of the new things you have. The first time I fought some of these monsters, it was painstaking. I didn't really have a lot. Now, with the ability to call in like a little portable propeller that flies me around the map, or the ability to call in that giant thumper or some elemental damage, I can take enemies down much quicker. And then, just like in Monster Hunter, when an enemy gets weak, they run off to another combat area. Depending on which monster you're fighting, if you've already gone through the map and you've already built in some of your traversal mechanics, you can actually continue to fight the enemy as they're retreating to do bonus damage, which is a really cool mechanic. So it rewards you for not only prepping the battlefield in that instance, but the more you play and the smarter you get, it will allow you to make those battles even better. Combat feels muddy at times. Just like Monster Hunter, you are locked in animations at times when you're trying to swing or hit an enemy with an attack. And unfortunately, at times, it does get a little. The combat does get a little difficult for no reason other than you're stuck in an animation you no longer want to do. Some of the weapons, especially as you're looking in the upper right corner of the screen, you're seeing all the available moves I have at any given point of the combo. Some of the more powerful attacks require multiple button presses that are timed, that rev up essentially, to create some very powerful punishing blows. And while an enemy is like rolling away from you while you're about to finish off a combo, and then to get hit and to get stun locked for maybe 3/4 of your health, or even getting down, is pretty aggravating. And this will happen a lot. That's why multiplayer in this works so well and is so rewarding, because at least with multiplayer, you know that a friend can revive you, and you can kind of set each other up. Like if you want to have somebody like tee off for like a big attack, the other person can do a really good job of kind of holding aggro to prevent the other player from getting hit, to allow them to finish off their stuff. And I like that. I think that works out really, really well. So, like I said, there's a lot of elements that work really, really well. There's a couple that are frustrating, but I do recommend this. I do like the building mechanic. Like I said, I think the combat, although it's not perfect, I think it works okay. For a first iteration, honestly, considering these are the guys that make the Dynasty Warriors game, for them to have never made a Monster Hunter-esque game to get so much right in the first go is pretty impressive. There is not an overwhelming amount of crafting materials or special potions or poisons to make if you don't want there to be. It's pretty basic in that regard. But I feel like if you're playing this and you think, man, it would be really cool if, you know, and then you fill in that if with some sort of status effect or some sort of unique type of damage, Monster Hunter most likely has it. The only thing that this game does different, like I said, is that building system, which works really, really well for traversal and combat. My biggest criticism with the game is the performance. It is really, really bad. There's a lot of stuttering in this game. A lot of stuttering in this game. And you're going to find numerous times where the game will freeze, you will get pop-in. It regularly drops sub 30 frames a second. I am playing on the performance mode, which is supposed to try to target 60 frames a second at 1080p. It definitely does not target 60 frames a second, and it does not even get close to that numerous times. I've seen a lot of people talk about the PC port of this particularly, saying how bad it is. The PlayStation version in 2024, as the time of the recording this, September 2024, isn't much better. And I keep seeing the pop-ins, and I keep seeing the ugly textures, and I keep getting this jarring, stuttering, hiccuping frame rate that really does pop me out of the game. It really does. But everything else is so fun about it, I'm just kind of willing to like almost forget it. But I can't play this game for long periods of time. It does give me a headache. It does start to mess with me when you see the sheer amount of stuttering and stammering and hiccuping in this game. And it's frustrating because there's not a ton going on in this world. It is very basic. You could argue that this would almost be like a PlayStation 4 title in terms of some of the textures and some of the quality. My best guess is just because there's so much rendering going on and so much physics modeling going on, because all of your designs and everything are in the world everywhere, and you could just run over to them. They don't seem to despawn. They're just there. There seems to be a lack of optimization, and I feel like the console is spending too much time trying to fix some of those, trying to like process some of those other mechanics when it really should just focus on something here. And I would almost prefer them to eliminate some of the massive open world and make the map more compartmentalized if it meant it would run better, because I don't think people would want to have a game perform like this. And looking through the reviews and the Metacritic, which sits anywhere in like the mid to high 7s, right? So like 7 to 8-ish. The general concern is performance, and unfortunately they did not seem to fix it. I don't know if a PlayStation 5 Pro version of this would help. This game seems to bring massive PCs even down to their knees, so I can't imagine a PlayStation 5 Pro would help significantly. I hope that they continue to refine and tweak this game. I think this game is like one patch away from really, really great performance. We're just not quite there yet, and I hope we get there. Despite all that, it is a lot of fun. And if you're somebody who plays in a 30 frame per second mode, first of all, you're nuts, but you're gonna enjoy it because it does seem to maintain the 30 frame per second significantly better than the 60. But give it a try. Try out some of the crafting. You really can't go wrong with a game like this as long as you're putting damage on that monster. However you do it is up to you. If you want to use all the crazy inventions, or you want to do hack and slash, or a combination of the two, you can. The controls are simple and intuitive. If you want to be more of a button masher, you can. If you want to be more of a advanced combo player, you can. There's a little bit of everything in there for everyone, and I liked it. So wanted to give my 2 cents on this. I will probably give a review towards the end once I've kind of collected everything to see if the end game radically changes. I know Monster Hunters, like after the main game is beat, that's when the real game begins. I'm curious to see how the end game is on Wild Hearts, but right now just progressing through the story, continuing to unlock the Karakuri that I am finding. I mean, there's like a page of like hundreds of them, and I've only found maybe 20. So I don't know how many more I'm going to get. I don't know if it completely fills that out or that's just kind of a generic I don't know yet, but there's a lot to unpack in this game if you want to find it. And I am enjoying that element of it right now. But I think in terms of like, if the end game doesn't change significantly, then I don't know. Maybe it's time to go back to maybe it's time to go back to Monster Hunter, or, you know, wait for the next iteration of Monster Hunter, which comes out next year. We'll see. Anyways, that wraps up today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.